Hey, this is Rob. Welcome back to the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. Now, if you're experiencing tough times and you're doing your best to hold your nerve, I hope you're going to get a sense of solidarity, some encouragement, and maybe some strategic insight from today's show. It's with the fabulous Juliane Caillouette Noble from the Sustainable Restaurants Association. And it's all about things she's learned while leading her organisation through some really difficult times into the success and impact they're now creating.
By this point last year, December 2024, we were really worried about being able to keep the lights on as an organization. It has been a journey. We are coming out of now what has been our strongest year ever. Getting clear on this idea of this person, this change maker, this partner that we wanted to work with, putting it up on our pin board, and for 2 years staring at it has resulted into this incredible kind of movement building thing for us in Mexico City.
Hey Juliane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
It's my pleasure. I enjoyed our catch up the other day, and during that conversation I realised it would really be so great if we could share some of these ideas with our podcast listeners as well. In terms of when we met, I think it was back in 2018 or so. You came on a Bright Spot training, like a next level Bright Spot training program. And I got to know you and the SRA a little bit then. And then again, more recently, a year or two ago, my colleague Ben did another session, catch-up session with your team as well. Before we get into some of the ideas, what is the SRA? What does it stand for? What's the mission? And top line, what's the way of working?
So I guess I should probably start. We're not a charity, but we are a kind of social impact focused company. And the Sustainable Restaurant Association is what the SRA stands for. And our mission is to accelerate towards a hospitality sector that is both socially progressive and environmentally restorative. So these kind of big words about fixing the food system, but we're primarily doing that through the vehicle of restaurants and trying to change behavior in restaurants.
What a crucial mission. I think when we first met, you were in a different role, but you are now the chief exec. When did you become the leader of the organization?
Yeah. So when we first met, I was the development director, and I was recently back from maternity leave. And I remember that Bright Spot training course as being something that was really, really valuable in terms of getting your head back in the game of storytelling and of really getting clear on what your story, what your organization is, does, how you tell your story, how you articulate it. And that was really, really powerful at the time, especially for an organization like the Sustainable Restaurant Association that has had a lot of different definitions and stories that we've told about ourselves for a long time. So I stayed in that role through the start of the pandemic. And if you can imagine an organization whose primary focus is working with restaurants, 2020 was exceptionally hard for us as an organization. And we ended up, quite a lot of the business was furloughed across 2020. And in August of 2020, right when the government said furlough was ending, everybody needed to get back to work, or we had made a really difficult decision to let go more than half of our team. And very quickly after that, I found out that our chief exec was planning on taking leave in 2021. So I became the acting managing director in January of 2021, at the height of the pandemic, when restaurants were not open and there was no timeline yet from the government around when restaurants would open. So we had kind of come out of a really horrible financial year. We were entering what seemed like a black hole of a financial year because we had no idea when business was opening again. And I formally kind of held on to that role from the end of 2021. Our previous chief exec did not return, and I have been running the organization ever since. So we are 5 years through my leadership of the organization.
Okay. It's been a rocky old road. Most of our listeners, their charities too, will have been on quite a roller coaster in the last few years. But really top line, could you give us a sense of where your results were and where they are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So immediately post 21, once businesses came back, we thought we were doing really well and we started to feel really positive. We saw some great uptick in partnerships and some great kind of momentum over the first post-pandemic period. And then we really saw that fall down. So we had a large partnership in place that came to an end in the end of 2023. And we really struggled in 2024 to really double down on our mission and try to focus, and didn't see the results fast enough, to the point that we thought by this point last year, December 2024, we were really worried about being able to keep the lights on as an organization, and that we might be coming to the end of our road. And then where we are now, we've just done our first ever year of over £1 million in revenue. And we had set a target for ourselves that we wanted to get to £1 million by the end of the year. We actually hit that goal in November. So we are doing better than ever before, with a sort of operational margin that is better than ever before.
Wow, it's such an uplift, such a turnaround from some extremely difficult times. And one can never be absolutely certain all of the factors that contribute to a lift in results like this, because some of them are clearly beyond your control. But as a leader, I know that you and your colleagues have been quite deliberately working on certain themes for the last few years. And probably those themes are interesting and useful to many of our listeners as well. I think one of them you mentioned to me when we spoke before was about clarity, about exactly who your key kind of partner is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something, again, if I reflect on those early conversations with Brightspot back in 2018 and the kind of journey that my thinking around this idea of clarity of who your ideal partner is, clarity of your story, of what your organization is, that really resonated with me back in 2018. And I think is something that we have kind of continued to hone in on and continued to refine and getting to a place where we sort of really understand where we sit in an ecosystem. The first thing is recognizing, I say we're the Sustainable Restaurant Association. For the 15 years that we have existed as an organization, we have talked about being for all of hospitality. And there have been various times in earlier moments at the SRA where that has looked like, what should we do for school food? What should we do for hospital food? What should we do for hotels and cafes and coffee shops and bars? And, and it snowballs and snowballs. And there's a real reason that we want to reach the entire hospitality sector. Don't get me wrong. We want all different types of formats to really care, invest, leverage their buying power, changing their behavior, because it changes the ecosystem. However, we don't need to contort ourselves into all sorts of shapes to be something for everyone. And we don't need to, contort ourselves to appeal to every partner that walks through the door. So for us, it's been getting really clear on this idea of the perfect partner, whether that's a larger partnership or whether that's the individual business that is working with the SRA on their action plan. We are an organization that is for the aspirational and ambitious. And those two words, I think, really stuck out to us as we started to really define who these really wonderful partners are that we've been working with for years. And for us, aspirational and ambitious can look like any format of hospitality. So we work with the catering team for the Eurostar, for example. So food being served on a train. And they have an ambitious view for what food served on a train should look like, and an ambitious view for what sustainable food means in the context that they are operating. We also have long-time relationships with some of the high street. Nando's is another good example of a partner of ours. Nando's sort of vision about being a good employer to their team, Nando's kind of vision about how they leverage their power in the ecosystem and how the choices that they make around their supply chain are both aspirational and ambitious. And so I think for us, that started to really hone in on who fits into this partnership ecosystem of ours. And it gave us loads of opportunity to find dream partners around the world.
Hey, it's Rob, and I'm super excited to let you know that my favourite masterclass, Wow Your Donors, is back. It's happening in London on the 4th of Feb 2026. If you like this podcast, or if you've ever found my webinars or our Bright Spot training helpful, I promise you will love the Wow Your Donors Masterclass 2026. The ideas we share are designed to help every fundraising discipline. To give you a sense of it, here's Laura Elliott, Head of Supporter Fundraising at Rennie Grove Peace Hospice, who took part last year.
It was really inspirational to be in a room with people from across the country at all different levels and stages and departments within fundraising, and to feed off that energy and that excitement and the ideas that were shared on the day. It also helped me to go away to work on the concept of personalising our approach even further, particularly with our event participants, to now see some of the great success that we're experiencing this year.
If you want to feel inspired like Laura, secure your place today before it sells out. If you're quick, you'll benefit from the early bird discount, which saves you £100. Find out more and book your place at brightspotfundraising.co.uk/services. I look forward to meeting you at Wow Your Donors 2026. Yeah, and probably 2 or 3 years ago, you would have said, well, yes, aspirational ones are in there, but could you give us a sense, because often it's only after we've made a shift that we realise in the past our model or our thinking wasn't quite as clear and focused as we thought it was at the time. Could you give us a sense of what it was before and what the shift is and the upsides to having made this shift?
You're right that the aspirationally ambitious businesses were always in there, but we were also, throwing ourselves out to sort of anyone that was making noises like they might be interested in the work that we did. I think it's not just for me as a leader to help get to be clear on who these ideal partners are, but really helping embed that into the team and into their behaviors and into their ability to think about who are the people that we are approaching, so that they're not feeling like they're hitting their head against a wall trying to change the wrong type of partner. That eats away at the resilience of a team, whether that's my team or your listeners' fundraising teams. When you're going for the wrong types of partners and you're hearing no a lot, that eats away at your confidence.
And when it's right, the upside is so valuable compared to when you're trying to put a slightly square peg into a round hole. And you were saying that a lot of this growth is because of clarity of who these ones are. Could you just give a sense of why it's made such a difference, or how it's made such a difference because some of these more fitting partners have really worked out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the other space where that aspirational ambitious kind of idea became really clear to us was restaurants within hotels globally. So we went from being an organization that was just in the UK with a couple of these partnerships in Hong Kong and in Japan, to now working with businesses in 41 countries and territories around the world. And so if you marry those two things, this idea that we wanted to become more global in our thinking and in our network, and we knew that the players that were keeping their foot on the gas in terms of the impact we wanted to have on the world were these aspirational, ambitious businesses, hotels were a really great fit within that. And we now are really excited because we've started working with some incredible hotels around the world. And hotels like there's an amazing hotel in Bali that's called Desa Potato Head. And on the Desa, they do the most incredible things for their community, for managing waste, for engaging other hospitality businesses. And they're just the perfect example of someone who is aspirational, ambitious, globally minded in their sort of thinking, and who fits perfectly kind of as a partner within our network. And then you go from single leaders like that to start realizing that there are global groups of hotels. Belmond, for example, have really beautiful luxury properties around the world, but they have an aspirational and ambitious perspective on sustainability that they want to drive through those properties. And that is, 38 global, beautiful hotels with multiple restaurants within them. And then that snowballs a bit, and all of a sudden you are speaking to Accor, who own 6,000 hotels, and we're rolling our first kind of partnership with the Sofitel brand around the world next year, which is very exciting for us. So again, you can see how all of a sudden you're kind of clear on what your space is. All different formats of hospitality fit into this category. It's also the trains, we're working with our first airline on their food for next year that we're really excited about. It's some of the most incredible independent businesses in countries around the world. So yeah, I think that sort of categorizes how we've seen these things coalesce to creating what is a really wonderful community of businesses that are taking action towards our mission.
Thanks, Juliane. I think another thing you said to me before about your portfolio is that when you looked at it, it felt risky because there was an over-reliance on one or two particular partners?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kicked off a partnership with a big corporate partner, same corporate partnership, 21, 22, 23. Having this partner was valuable to the organization, don't get me wrong, because it was a large enough amount of money that allowed us the rebuilding that we needed to do to get the people in place, the brand positioning in place. But it was incredibly risky because by the time we got to 2023 and that sum had kind of eked up from that corporate partner, they were about 46% of our annual income that year. What we knew was this was going to end with their strategy and what they were funding. We could see that they were sort of pivoting away from food and back into sport, which was where they were more comfortable. As you can imagine, the stress levels of something, a partnership not renewing that is 46% of your income is not sustainable for an organization. And what we learned from that experience was we needed a much more diverse set of partners. And we have now built back in such a way that no individual partner is any more than 8% of our total revenue. And that is so much more sustainable for us as a business, because if you lose one partner, one business goes away, you're not all of a sudden thinking about needing to close your doors.
Yeah, I guess this is an interesting theme to me, because there were times in this journey where literally you maybe had a month or two revenue left and there was literally, we may have to close.
Yeah.
Certainly let a lot of people go unless things change. I wonder if you could give us a sense of, you've done it a bit already, but what's that like? And in particular, how do you personally find a way to keep on believing?
It's such a good question. I think as a leader, I did have an element of confidence that we were going to get through it. For a leader, you have to have a belief that what you are doing is powerful and that you really believe in the success of the organization, because I think there's an underpinning there that becomes kind of infectious to the people who you are having conversations with, to your own team as you're inspiring them. And I think for me, what it looks like in practice is really reconnecting with the work. And also having a lot of conversations, take the pressure off in terms of every conversation needs to convert and everything needs to be a yes. I know Ben talks about test drives. It's a mix of that kind of test drive mentality where you're just going to have as many coffees as possible and as many conversations as possible. And in a way, that lowers the pressure on any one conversation. It also then has the benefit of diversifying your revenue. If you're having as many conversations as possible and you're not just focusing on the one, you could end up with 10 yeses and instead of, the one.
Hi, it's Rob. And just before we get to the last bit of my chat with Juliane, I've got a quick question for you. Do you find it helpful listening to these Bright Spot podcasts and breakfast clubs? If so, the training we provide would help you at a whole different level in terms of both the techniques you learn and also the lift these Bright Spot courses give to your confidence and to your momentum. Whether you need to help your whole fundraising team through a training day, or you especially want to transform major gifts or corporate partnerships income through one of our famous mastery programs on those two topics, please do get in touch to request a chat. All the info is at brightspotfundraising.co.uk on the training page. I look forward to hearing from you. Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but another upside to doing that is it is more within your control. You can't control someone's definitely going to meet me for coffee, but it's more within your influence to seek a conversation with someone who might care about your cause than to keep looking at the bottom line. I really hope that money comes in. You're doing something about it. And then, of course, the other bit of it is, and it really does apply for our listeners, if one can somehow find the energy and confidence to get some of those conversations, they won't all go perfectly, but on the whole, most of them will energize you because most of them are going to be with people who do believe in what you're about, whether or not they're able to give you some money right now. So the act of feeling less isolated and alone, and therefore potentially hopeless and apathetic, just getting those chats per week in and of itself, rather than the money, it solves the more immediate problem of your energy and your morale, that we're fighting a fight that other people believe in.
Absolutely.
And when we spoke last week, you said something about your internal thought process, because maybe in hindsight, well, that was the solution all along. Why wouldn't one do that? Yeah. Hindsight can play that trick on us. But what you said to me was along the lines of, how can I get that same outcome in a different and maybe even a better way? That seems to be a question you've been practicing all throughout this journey, because you've had to keep shifting and doing things differently. And if, as a leader or an individual, one keeps asking, I want the outcome, but is there a different way of doing it?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And preserving that, is there a different way of doing it for myself, for my team, for our cause? And those kind of three different pieces to that puzzle. And I think, because I think sometimes maybe as either leaders or as fundraisers, we might be thinking, is there a different way of doing it for the cause? But we kind of forget that ourselves, our energy, and our team and their energy also ultimately have an impact on the outcomes and the cause. So yeah, I think that's a really good reminder to keep in store. And it's definitely been really powerful for us as an organization.
Thanks, Juliane. I wonder if there's any other particular tactics that you have found interesting, maybe based on something you did with Ben, or just something else that has led to some of these results?
One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, especially because we're coming to the end of the year and coming to some of the strategic planning for next year, has been the Dream 10 and the work that Ben, when he came and he spoke to my team a couple of years ago, he spoke about how getting clear on these Dream 10 partners and then setting a sort of visual reminder of those Dream 10 and making that really present for yourself. And your podcast listeners won't be able to necessarily see this, but as I'm talking to you, I'm sitting in front of the pin board / vision board in our office. I've got a scratch off map behind my head of all of the countries that we're working in, where we can scratch them off as we go. So again, really making those successes kind of visual to the team. But one of the things that they won't be able to see behind me is a picture of a Mexican chef whose name is Enrique Olivera, standing in front of his restaurant called Pujol in Mexico City. And if any of your listeners are fans of the series Chef's Table, Enrique Olivera has a really powerful episode of Chef's Table in season 2, where he talks about local foodways and preservation of old techniques, and just really, really inspiring work when it comes to the world of sustainability and particularly provenance of ingredients and all of this work in this space. He was not a current partner of ours. And so I had cut his picture out and put it up on our pin board after this conversation with Ben. And we did a breakfast morning with the team, and everybody was cutting things to add up onto our board. Anyway, fast forward, that was summer of 24. Again, in this period where we were kind of in a hole needing to climb out of it. Post putting that picture up, we regained contact and started connecting with his team. And it actually led to a conversation in December last year. I happened to be in Mexico on holiday with my family, and there was a message from their team that asked if anybody was available to meet them in person. And so the week after Christmas, I went to the restaurant. I left my children at the playground with my husband in Mexico City, and I went to their restaurant and had a coffee with their team. And again, back to these same themes, right? It was just a coffee. It was the week after Christmas. This wasn't a big pitch and sell and trying to kind of get money out of them. But what an opportunity to just have a coffee with their team and talk about their work. That led to them confirming a partnership where they just have completed Food Made Good. But on top of that, it has snowballed into something more where last month, at the start of November, Enrique opened the doors to his restaurant and invited leaders from all different hospitality businesses across Mexico City in to have breakfast at his restaurant to talk about the sustainable food movement and on behalf of our team. So one of my members of staff, who actually is from Mexico City originally, was there. She presented about Food Made Good, and she hosted a panel with some of the most amazing chefs in Mexico City talking about how we drive this movement forward. So what an incredible full circle moment where getting clear on this idea of this person, this change maker, this partner that we wanted to work with, putting it up on our pin board and for 2 years staring at it has resulted into this incredible kind of movement building thing for us in Mexico City.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Juliane. It's been so wonderful to hear what you've been up to and the fact that these things have been paying off, especially in the last 12 to 24 months. Congratulations. I look forward to following your story more in the future. But for now, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to share these examples.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
There you go. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting the Fundraising Bright Spots show. If you enjoyed it, I'd be super grateful if you'd take a moment and share it on with your team or on LinkedIn, so that together we can help as many good causes as possible. Good luck with your fundraising and your leadership today, and I look forward to sharing another Bright Spot story with you very soon.